Hello and welcome back to the Keep Right On podcast. I'm Alex Dicken, and as ever I'm joined by my co-host Brian Dick, and today we are joined by Reach Business of Football writer Dave Powell to run over the financials involving Birmingham City ahead of their championship return. Obviously there's an awful lot of play here. There's PSR, profit sustainability regulations, which obviously all championship and EFL clubs have to abide by, and has been causing quite a few clubs in the Premier League headaches over the last 2 seasons at least. And a lot more, sponsorship deals that Blues have made over the last 12 months, which are going to obviously have an impact that we're going to talk about. Firstly, Brian, how are you?
Yeah, I'm really good, thanks. It's nice to be joined by someone who will actually know what they're talking about.
Yeah, and Dave,
yeah, the podcast goes first.
Thanks for coming on, Dave. Can you just give us like a quick, brief overview of people who haven't listened or read your work, that listen to the podcast, as to what you do and kind of the world you live in?
Yeah, it's a mad one really, because you'd imagine it. 5 years ago, it probably wouldn't be required to have someone to talk about the business of football and the kind of the machinations that go on behind the scenes of football clubs. But the game has evolved, the way we consume it has evolved, and these things are now more and more prevalent in the game. And yeah, it's just about unpicking a lot of these really. So I mean, predominantly covering the Premier League. It's the PSR has been a huge issue for not just for clubs like Everton or Forest, but for clubs like Manchester United and Arsenal and Villa, etc. So yeah, money is what makes the game tick. It's what finances signings, wages, ambitions for growth, all those things. They all have to be paid. The players need to be paid, and it doesn't just come from the turnstiles clicking anymore. And it has to be from a myriad other things. So yeah, it's just kind of about unpicking all those things and following the money, I suppose.
Birmingham City fans will be all too aware of what was FFP. I'm going to use that interchangeably with PSR and FFP. Maybe you'll correct us if you need to. Obviously, a few years ago, they exceeded the amount of allowable losses, which was 39 million, by about 10 million quid, and they ended up being docked 9 points with a small Christian Pedersen-sized indiscretion thrown in there for good measure as well. That was a few years ago, as I say, Dave. Are we talking about the same thing? What are we talking about in terms of PSR and the championship and the thresholds and all that sort of thing?
The PSR threshold remain the same for the championship, so it's 13 million per season. Now, all clubs who have been part of the EFL are party to those to that 13 million per year over the 3-year period. So Birmingham going up means they'll be assessed over the same 3-year period, whereas in the Premier League, if you're coming down over your 3-year period, you're allowed £35 million per year, and then obviously when you come down to the Championship, it reduces to 13. So it causes problems for the likes of Leicester and recently because there's so much to and fro between the two leagues. But no, in essence, they remain the same. So £13 million per year. Now, obviously, Birmingham have been operating on a different set of cost control. So it's salary cost management protocol in League One. Now, as a Championship side, the season before they got relegated to League One, I think it was 75% of turnover to revenue they're allowed to spend. Now, for normal clubs in League One that haven't been relegated from the Championship, that was 60%, but you are allowed to spend 100% of any equity investment from the owners. So, obviously, with Nighthead being very ambitious owners and wanting to accelerate the growth and the return to the Championship in order to achieve the main aim of going back to the Premier League, they invested considerably. So, the club spent last summer. I mean, Jay Stansfield was, a huge buy for them. But things also have improved across the board during this season. So even though they're relegated from the Championship, attendances, correct me if I'm wrong here, so they're up 5,000 maybe year on year because of the redevelopment of the stadium. Now, that's significant for Birmingham because I think in 23-24 their match day revenue is about 6 million odd. Now, an additional 5,000 bums on seats per game is impactful over the course of a season. So this year would have been a good year for them. They would have had some commercial deals come in, and they're probably going to go up. I mean, Tom Wagner, you would imagine from the outside looking in, should be someone who is against these PSR rules. But I think in the past he's spoken quite openly about the fact he thinks he's actually broadly a good thing, because the idea being to encourage to spend within your means. But that points to the fact that they have a longer term plan in play for Birmingham, and they've got lots of different levers which they can pull, which maybe other clubs, say for the likes of Wrexham, can't. So I think they're going up into the Championship with confidence that they'll be completely compliant with PSR for the for the coming season. So yeah, I think now it's about how to accelerate revenues to allow them to spend at a level which will be impactful in the Championship, because it's a whole different ballgame from League One to the Championship in terms of putting your money to work and that being meaningful.
Dave, can I just ask, is there a figure that they have to get under? Obviously, this 3-year period is going to be Championship 22-23, Championship 23-24, and then League One 24-25. So that is that still 3 times 13, or is there a
they're going to be assessed over that period as far as I'm concerned. So it's as far as I know. So it will be a case of, because that's seen as being broadly generous. The idea when clubs fall down the leagues is to encourage some more investment from owners, should they be able to, but also to manage costs of those clubs that fall down to the league. So because most of the issues that clubs have in terms of affordability and getting down that really kind of dark wormhole of tumbling through the leagues, like we've seen of Scunthorpe United over the years, things like that. In my own team, Chester, we tend to see a lot of those kind of liquidations and bankruptcies occur in kind of League 1 and 2 when the wages, the teams that have come down from high and the wage bill's hard to kind of alight yourself from. So they'll be assessed over that period. But I mean, as I said, they've got a lot of revenue generating opportunities to come this coming season. I mean, documentary being one. They've got a number of commercial sponsors on board. I mean, major ones as well. They're talking, Delta Airlines, etc. So I think they're well positioned. But I still think this will be it's almost done on a piecemeal basis, because it's so difficult to come up and break that kind of hierarchy that exists at the top of the Championship from the teams who have the benefit of the parachute money coming down, because that's why we have so many yo-yo clubs. So I think it'll be a case of trying to accelerate those revenues to a point where they can, like I said, they can put some meaningful capital to work on the pitch.
The subject of parachute payments is something that Tom Wagner's spoken quite openly and honestly about recently. There'll only be 4 teams, by my calculations, in the league next year that are still in receipt of parachute payments, those being the 3 that come down from the Premier League, obviously. And Sheffield United are in their second year, because Norwich and Watford have just had their last year, and Luton have obviously been relegated, and Leeds and Burnley went back up. So it feels like an opportunity. Speaking to Tom Wagner recently, he suggested that Blues want to be in a position where they can kind of make enough revenue so that the parachute payments become irrelevant. Obviously, you've just listed off a whole host of sponsorship deals they've signed in the last 12 to 18 months. Is that realistic? Can they make that much money that those parachute payments become irrelevant? An even keel.
It's a challenge. I mean, everything is about being smart, the smartest people in the room, I suppose, and recruiting smarter, because it doesn't always, follow the course that the team that is in receipt of the biggest money is the one that goes back up. However, it's largely been the case. So the parachute payments are a percentage of the central payments from the Premier League, and they diminish over a sliding scale over a 3-year period. So after year 3, those clubs that have been relegated 3 years previous are back to square one. They have the ability to make some of that up. Most definitely to close that gap meaningfully, because they are going to have access to stronger commercial partnership deals than maybe some of their rivals may have, because there is a narrative around it. Now, it's as a Chester fan, it absolutely kills me that to throw any kind of praise on Wrexham, but I mean, that's what their ability to do, is to grow commercial revenues. That's the whole play for them to grow now, is to raise commercial revenues. However, for as wealthy as Ryan Reynolds is and Rob McElhenney they know they have to sell parts of that football club to get fresh investment, because it has to become a kind of a real serious business now, as opposed to kind of almost an expensive hobby. So, and there is only so much. I mean, you can do. I mean, this documentary with Birmingham, actually, I mean, the whole timing of it with it covers last season. The season just passed. Obviously, there's the Wrexham effect, which they'll be looking to tap into because Wrexham feature in it. There's that kind of the rivalry during the season that goes on. The Tom Brady effect, which you can't underplay in the US because someone that spends a fair bit of time there. It is, he is he's kind of deified almost in sporting circles, certainly. So I think they have access to avenues which other teams just don't, because there is a narrative and a storyline there which brands will be interested to get on board with over the course of the next 3, 4, 5, 10 years even, because it's everything surrounding it. I mean, for as long as I can remember, it's always been Birmingham's the country's second city. The population's huge. It really feels like there is a huge opportunity there to turn the club into kind of a footballing behemoth, but that takes time and it takes lots of money. Now they've got lots of money, or someone willing to put lots of money to play at times when it's required. It's just about the time now, I suppose. But they all, this is ultimately for them. It sounds kind of almost perverse to say the whole Wrexham narrative probably aids Birmingham's ability to tap into some commercial revenue streams in the US. You're always kind of in that jet stream of it all, and there isn't many compelling narratives in the Premier League. So for kind of US fan bases in particular, they look at the Premier League, they look at clubs which have a history and a story to tell. Liverpool do very well, but for a lot of other clubs, they're just kind of white noise. I mean, the Premier League summer season this year is Bournemouth, Everton, Manchester United, and I forget the other one, West Ham. Now, Manchester United, huge deal. Everton have a history, but it's the rest are kind of jostling for position, and there isn't really a market for them. Whereas Wrexham is more appealing to the US market because they've got a foothold in there through the documentary, and Birmingham will be as well if they can sprinkle some stardust on that as and when they go out to the US, and that'll be meaningful over time because the game, we're a year out from the World Cup, and I expect that Birmingham will make a strong play to try and make sure they're in the eyes and ears of anyone who's kind of consuming football in the US and beyond over the next 12 months to try and make sure they're leveraging every opportunity they have to try and grow their commercial revenues.
You are right.
Go on, Brian. Go on.
You are right, Dave. And sorry to pour water on your chest of pain, but there is almost a symbiotic relationship between Birmingham and Wrexham at the moment. You just look at the most recent episodes of the Wrexham documentary, and Blues are all over it. They've got Tom Brady all in that documentary several times, and they're really cashing in on that sort of that growing rivalry. It's bizarre, isn't it? Because 18 months ago, Blues and Wrexham were in completely different orbits, but now they do seem to be feeding off each other almost. Do you view that access or unlocking the revenue and the profile in the US as almost the central tenet behind Knighthead's ownership?
Yeah, it's a big part of it, but also I think they see the value, and there is a lot that can be done in terms of growing the club in the city and growing its support base for future generations within its own locality and beyond, because it's just not been able to be achieved over the past 10, 15 years. So, there's probably some generations of fans that maybe have been lost and have gone to look at the Premier League or whatnot. So it's about positioning themselves for the future. I mean, and the developments and the sports quarter, etc., be telling. And also they've got a commitment to the city itself through, the cricket acquisition, etc. I think it's a play for the long term. I don't think the US is just a play. I just think it is the play for now because it's kind of riding the crest of a wave, I suppose, and it's right to try and tap into that and win some fandom. But that won't be what transforms Birmingham truly. What will do that is by investing in infrastructure at a time when other clubs, even Premier League clubs, some Premier League clubs are struggling to do that due to the cost of capital, the cost of borrowing is very high. Some clubs manage to do it. So Manchester United face a real problem because they're trying to build a £2 billion stadium, 100,000 seater stadium. But the cost of doing that's kind of cost prohibitive at the same time as trying to be competitive. Now, Birmingham have the ability now. Yes, they're going to be competitive, but there's no onus on them to be to kind of run before they can walk. I mean, and that's why I think this will be done on a piecemeal basis, because the whole thing has to come together. The infrastructure, the commercial revenues has to all feed in at a timely manner into what goes on the pitch, so you can invest at the right times and eventually get back to the Premier League and stay there. Because there'll be some clubs who have kind of almost missed the boat a little in terms of investing in their own infrastructure that will kind of fall by the wayside. So, no, I think it's a really interesting kind of case study at the moment for Birmingham, because it is truly when you see some kind of ownership go into certain clubs, and I don't really understand the thesis behind it, because maybe the demographics don't work, the locality doesn't work, the population size doesn't work. But Birmingham is it's a huge city. It's kind of globally recognized. It has it has a rich history. It has even things, it sounds really daft to say, but even things when you think of the city's view globally, things like Peaky Blinders and things like that help, because it puts the city back in a light. I mean, and the director of Peaky Blinders is doing the documentary. So it's about putting the city front and center of the world again. It has arenas which host world-class concerts, world-class artists, etc. So it really needs kind of a world-class football team to go with it now. Obviously, Villa have designs to be that, but I see no reason, given the fact that Birmingham City, the club that bears the name of this city, that they shouldn't be thinking that in time we're the ones really who should be taking that crown.
You'll do for me, Dave, with that line. Go on, Alex.
No, it's very interesting that the documentary has come before the pre-season tour of America, because normally that's the way that in years gone by teams will try and break America. But it's like they're creating or trying to create an American audience before they actually say, we're going to go over there. Because you don't want to be like, we see the Club World Cup at the moment. They can't sell tickets, can they? You don't want to be like that and go to America and not sell out. So it's interesting that they're going to put this there, no doubt, with Tom Brady's prints all over it and a lot more interviews. And they perhaps should be with him on that to promote them in America before they actually go over there.
Yeah, no, it's interesting you say that, because I was talking to a sports investor friend of mine last week, and we were discussing the Club World Cup, and basically the lack of tickets sold shouldn't be a huge surprise. I mean, I might be in the camp of there is too much football, and sometimes scarcity is what leads to the value of something. And players are coming off the back of grueling seasons into a competition which no one really knows what it is. The narrative behind it's poor. The marketing's been really poor, and that's what it's all about. So there's no story to tell about this Club World Cup. It's just a competition which has been created, and all the marketing I've seen around it has been really, really dull. It's all been well-worn tribe. I mean, the World Cup's different because the World Cup is the World Cup. It has history. It has, you can tap into all those years of it. But when you're creating something new and just dumping it on people in a market, you think, you're American, you'll watch this because you like football now, right? It doesn't really work like that. So the idea being that Birmingham are trying to cultivate an audience that is interested in Birmingham City before Birmingham City get there. So you've got, there'll be a documentary whereby they can hopefully try and tap into some new fan bases, whether it's in Maine or Minnesota or whatever. It's about people being interested in the Birmingham City tale. And so for some people, it'd be because it's the antithesis of Wrexham. They'll think American fans certainly like rivalry. Wrexham story's been great for them, but they need a rival and they need someone to play the other side of the fence. So Birmingham have been that for this past season. Don't get me wrong, the Wrexham documentary will subside eventually. Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney will go off and do something else, because there comes a natural point where things just stop for certain clubs, and they won't have the infrastructure to make them Real Madrid or something like that, But for Birmingham, it's a bit different. So this is very much kind of a story of redemption, and a city which really should be, have a world-class football team. So I think it's a clever play to kind of get the story out there among the kind of American audience in particular before they go there, because you can tap into all that interest then, and then you are selling something else. It's of interest to commercial partners, it's of interest to fans, and then it's of interest to people who try and make season 2.
I'll bore Alex now because I'm an NFL fan, but people in the States, they're fascinated by Tom Brady, aren't they? So the audience will be maybe Tom Brady's audience, and then because Tom Brady is associated with Birmingham City, they might got sort of siphoned through that way. But I just don't think that the Wrexham angle is another sort of point of interest for them as well. But I just don't think we can understate, the profile and the importance that Tom Brady brings to Birmingham City for that particular market, and maybe even globally.
No, you can't. I mean, other clubs have tried it and are doing it. Sports fans don't want to root for the billionaires and the hedge fund managers that own the teams. They attach themselves onto sporting greatness. So, it's probably 15 years now since LeBron James took a stake in Liverpool. And he still holds a kind of a slice of Fenway Sports Group who own Liverpool. So, and this is because they can, over time, Liverpool have tried to tap into his own audience, and then other clubs have done it. Since then. I mean, Leeds have got
JJ Watt at Burnley.
JJ Watt at Burnley. But Tom Brady is kind of on a level on his own in terms of the NFL, and in the US, the NFL is the biggest league by a country mile. It has a TV deal over 10 years worth $100 billion. It's the biggest media deal of any sport globally. And that's for 16 games, plus the playoffs, in a season. So just goes to show the level of interest in it. And Tom Brady is kind of a king among men in those circles. So I think they will tap into that, but also Tom Brady will try and bring some of his major connections on board. It's all about, football, it sounds really, whenever I say it, I always kind of make myself feel a little bit sick, but it is the entertainment industry now, whether we like it or not. Yes, for tradition. I am a traditionalist. It's the reason why I'm a Chester fan, and we pay to own the football club, etc. We don't have an owner. We pay a monthly fee to own it, etc. So, and I go on a Saturday, and and there's something about it being far away from the Premier League which I like. However, I do understand that this is the entertainment industry now. You can be traditional about it. You can, the football is still the same. The goal is still the same, to be successful. However, all the things that make success happen now are all plugged into the entertainment industry. So, because it's on our screens more than anything else. It's on, we consume it 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It can be monetized in a myriad ways, and it's valuable as a commodity. That's why there's kind of been so much investment, particularly from the States, that's come over into European football. Now there's more of a bit of a flight to quality, really. So it's the biggest assets which people want, because everything else has been hoovered up. Because you only have to look down the pyramid in the AFL as there's US ownership from, in League One, League Two and below. My team Chester was the first team ever to have an American owner. So it was and he made himself manager. So it's something to Google there for anyone that wants to see how things can go awry very quickly. But there is the value in it is that they see, because the US sporting landscape is very much geared towards entertainment and the fan and the proposition to the fan. Everything is tied in, yes, to competitive success, because if you're rubbish, no one cares. You can put on the best show and best marketing and best strip, best everything, best arena, but if the product is rubbish, then no one's going to come watch it, right? So you have, but the US understand that the idea to try and monetize a live event like football is a big one, and I think the storytelling, the tradition around the English game particularly attracts people because it's so long-standing, and we have this we're on this little island where we all have very different views wherever we are in the country, different demographics, the way everything we do is different. At any different part of the country, it's such a melting pot. It's really interesting to broadcast as an entertainment product. So I think it's about who does that best in the coming years.
Blues are just going, obviously this is part of a wider picture, isn't it, the documentary, because it will count towards Blues revenue for whatever fee they do get for it. And they've obviously got the Delta deal, they've got Virtue Motors, there's obviously Nike, Undefeated, who came on board in 2023. So just looking at the figures from the last accounts, Blues, I think revenue was about 6 million in 22-23, then it shot up to 13 million 23-24 in United's first season in charge. Obviously, since then, Delta, obviously this deal with Amazon have all come into the equation. Can we estimate how much any of it's worth, or how much it could be worth over the last 12 months into the next 12 months?
I mean, the commercial revenue for 24 was about just under 14. It's very difficult to put figures on it, because even when these figures in the Premier League are reported, they're always there or thereabouts, and there are a lot of different attachments to or caveats attached to how well commercial partnerships do, even down to kit suppliers. It can be down to promotion, or how many times you feature in TV broadcasts, etc., or qualification European competition. However, we can look at some of the more recent deals that have been struck. So Everton's stadium naming rights deal with Hill Dickinson for their new stadium is about £10 million a year, roughly. So working back from that, I mean, that's a valuable piece of kind of sponsorship inventory, because it's a huge new stadium and they're the first people to get naming rights, so that makes it more valuable. It's worth in single digit millions to Birmingham, but I imagine there's a lot of caveats attached to success which can be impactful. So obviously there's fair market value for clubs when they look at sponsorship deals. You can't just come in and receive a check for 500 million from a company associated with someone who owns a club, and that solves all your problems. So, but what you can do is you can build a commercial partnership over time, which really becomes something valuable. So I imagine there's quite a few caveats attached to things like the Delta deal, whereby if say Birmingham reach the Premier League, expect a significant uplift in the value of a deal. And things like that, or if they get a run in the domestic competition, so they get to the FA Cup final, something like that, all that can be really valuable. So there's a number of ways you can bake in increase in deals. So it's hard to put a figure on it though, but that 14 million or so they got for 24, I imagine with their financial year runs to the end of June, Birmingham, I think. So I imagine that's probably going to be, climbing far higher. I think the difference year on year was, almost doubled from kind of 23 to 24. So I imagine they're probably going to be pushing 20 million in commercial revenue for 24-25, and that's being pretty conservative, I imagine.
Alex, we've probably covered this on here before, and I don't know if Dave is aware of this, but it strikes this particular sort of initiative that Blues have come up with, or Knighthead have come up with, strikes me of a bit of a hack. It's the social media interaction bonus, in that the more traction they get on social media and impressions, I think Tom Wagner called them, the more Knighthead are able to pump into the club. Have I described that right, Alex? You might be able to.
Yeah. I think so. There's I haven't got the exact figures to hand. You should have warned me when we were speaking about this before we came on, but it was worth, I think, a few million in the back end of the 23-24 season. The deal came in January or February that year. So it does seem like, kind of too good to be true in a way. Like, it's like I look at it and think, why isn't everyone doing this deal? You know what I mean? Because everyone can surely have the same access, the same naming rights, and then kind of put the money into the pot when the impressions roll in, right?
Yeah. Have you heard of that? Do other clubs do that, Dave?
I couldn't speak to their individual deals, but it's monetizing reach is for the bigger clubs. A lot of that is already baked into commercial deals. So if you're Liverpool, for example, the value in the deal that they're paying in the first place is, a lot of it is predicated on having access to use Liverpool's social channels. It's having access to the amount of posts that they can have across Liverpool channels. But when you've got so many commercial partners, it becomes very, very difficult to satisfy all. So I think it kind of depends on the portfolio you have of people, because everyone's going to want a slice of something like that. But I think certainly for the biggest clubs, the strength of their social media following and their reach is kind of shown in the strength of the commercial deals. But But for someone like for Birmingham, that's it's impactful because those are only going to grow as this kind of journey continues, and it's probably a short to medium term way of bringing in some extra money. I imagine when I'll say when because it does seem like it will be an eventuality in terms of Premier League football in the not too distant future. That's when the value of all these deals start to go up and their reach becomes part of the Premier League elite and it really starts to rise. And then they'll start to probably see greater value in terms of commercial partnerships as a whole, who will look at their social media reach and things and kind of bake that into the money they're going to be paying commercially, if that makes sense.
Yeah. That's quite a turn as well because every time when Blues were finished a game last year, they'd always post a league table. It'd always be like flying high with Delta or something. So it just shows obviously that Delta are taking advantage of Blues social media following to boost their own profile. So yeah, as you say, once that gets to the Premier League, then it becomes stratospheric.
And there's only so many partners you can do that with as well, because otherwise it becomes very almost in the face of fans that all you're doing is just throwing product adders and sponsorship and nothing's organic, So it's a deal you can do, maybe do one or two, but that's kind of about it.
Yeah, sorry, Dave. Just you made reference to the sort of the sports quarter, and I suppose the sort of the precedent that Knighthead refer to and that we all look at is what Man City did with the east side of Manchester. That was as much about sort of developing cities and as much as it was, building a successful football team. There's a lot of social sort of investment that went in there. Do you see similarities from what you hear about the Birmingham Sports Quarter as to what has happened and what was achieved at City?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose. I mean, since the arrival of kind of Abu Dhabi at Manchester City, I mean, even real estate in Manchester, that just in general around Manchester itself really accelerated. But I think as a project, the Etihad campus, the City Stadium, they got Co-op Live, which kind of sits on that campus there. It is a blueprint for what most big clubs are looking at in terms of the longer term. So everything on one site, it becomes a destination venue for supporters, and it can be used 365, 7 days a week, and that's the key thing, because for so long, in decades and decades, football stadiums have been used on every other Saturday, occasional Tuesdays, the odd reserve team game, and they are expensive to keep, and they are the kind of most expensive. The biggest asset that clubs hold is the bricks and mortar. So, but if you look at, Tom Wagner and Knighthead will know full well from probably being in circles, investment circles, which have with other companies that have done this type of thing. You look at any development in North American sport now, it always centers on kind of a campus. It's a stadium and other ancillary development. So I think it's the Los Angeles Rams just unveiled recently kind of plans for a new stadium, but that's a campus and that's investment from the kind of Kroenke Sports Entertainment, which owns Arsenal, and that's for the long term. So it makes sense to create a venue, and especially in a city like Birmingham, because you've got the footprint there and the population to be able to make use of a facility like that. It's not like, I always remember the Forest Green Rovers plan to do this, that, and the other, but it's a village in Nailsworth in Stroud. So that never worked. But the whole thing has to come together, and it has to have the right kind of locality and demographics to be able to support it long term, which Manchester had for its own campus, and Birmingham certainly would. So it's a similar play, yes. I mean, the Manchester City one is, yes, everyone criticises them for all the charges and everything aside. As an investment into a business, they went full throttle, and they have reached touch points with all the places that a good ownership group should in terms of how to build an infrastructure. they've built an infrastructure that supports their success now, not just requires kind of an uplift in terms of transfer spend every year. It washes its own face. It creates the biggest revenues and everything like that. So that's to be applauded. And I think longer term, that type of thing is the only thing really that will sustain success at the top for clubs, and clubs that don't do that, I think, will fall behind. So it should be instructive that Tom Wagner and Knighthead are looking at doing that, because that kind of lays out the plan for future success, which, hopefully in the next 10, 15 years will be something far greater than it currently is.
Dave, I want to thank you very much for your time and your insight into a plan and a set of proposals that is, just excites us so much down here. So
thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. Enjoyed it.
Yeah, appreciate you dropping in, and I hope that's been interesting for all the listeners. And we might not get a keep right on out of ardent Chester fan Dave, but it's a big keep right on from me and Alex.